President Biden's approval rating has fallen to its lowest level yet, with only 40% of Americans saying they approve of the president's job performance, a 3-point drop since February. That's according to a new NBC poll, which also found that 7 in 10 Americans expressed low confidence in the president's ability to deal with the crisis in Ukraine, while 8 in 10 voiced worry that the war will increase gas prices and possibly involve nuclear weapons.
42% of respondents said they approved of Biden's handling of foreign policy, while only 33% approved of his job performance on the economy. Now, plurality said they blame the president and his policies for rising prices. Just this weekend, President Biden warned of food shortages across the U.S. and Europe as a result of Western sanctions against Russia. Let's watch.
With regard to food shortages, yes, we did talk about food shortages. And it's going to be real. The price of these sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia. It's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well.
Our rising panel joins us now with their reactions. Julia Manchester is a political reporter for The Hill, and Philip Wegmann is a White House reporter for Real Clear Politics. Welcome to you both.
Thank you. Good morning.
And so, Julia, this is his lowest approval rating in this particular poll. He's been in the 30s in some other polls throughout the past year or so. What's your reaction to this latest slump?
You know, I think it has to trace back to the economy. We are seeing inflation continue to rise. We are seeing gas prices rise. And it's interesting that after the invasion of Ukraine, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and the White House's reaction to slap on those sanctions against Russia, we saw the White House go on this public relations blitz, essentially calling this Putin's price hike. And I think that looking at these polls, it shows that American voters aren't buying that. They recognize that way before this invasion of Ukraine, prices were going up and inflation was a real problem. What's interesting, though, is this poll is coming after a number of polls that were taken after the State of the Union earlier this month that showed Biden getting a bit of a bump, that post-State of the Union bump in the polls. And we've seen actually some other polling that shows that a lot of Americans approve of his decisions to slap sanctions on Russia, and Americans are very much appear to be united according to data in getting tough economically on Russia in the wake of the invasion. But I think this polling shows that that's not enough to relieve this slump Biden finds himself in, that it's once again tracing itself back to the economy and Americans disappointment in how that's being handled.
Yeah, I think it's one thing to say that Americans are broadly supportive, or at least they understand the steps the administration is taking with respect to Russia, but that doesn't mean they like Biden any better for it. And Philip, it seems like his numbers only move generally in one direction. And how bad will it be months from now when election time rolls around?
Well, there is a little bit of an echo of last summer in the numbers that we're seeing right now, when you see that the majority of Americans, they supported ending the war in Afghanistan, but they also disapproved of the way that the Biden administration removed the United States from that conflict. So while it's certainly possible to see a majority of Americans saying that they stand with Ukraine, that they oppose Russian aggression in the region, that doesn't necessarily translate to those same Americans giving the White House props for how they're dealing with the war. Obviously, polling is not the most important thing when it comes to a land war in Europe, but I think that is one factor here. In terms of how far the president can slide, the polling that you just referenced, that's roughly in line with what we've seen from the Real Clear Politics average for some time now. I think that while a lot of the focus rightfully is on the economy, is on inflation, which is now becoming expected inflation among consumers, I think that if we rewind again back to August, September of last year, when we see the bottom fall out for Biden in terms of approval ratings, is during the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan, and then also when COVID did not sort of take a backseat. I think that it's possible that as the pandemic, is in the rearview mirror, that maybe that pressure is alleviated. Maybe we see the president's numbers sort of stabilize. But right now, this is certainly, this is the kind of polling landscape that you expect when you're in line for a shellacking in the House.
Right. And Julia, it felt like under Trump that he had both kind of a lower ceiling, but also a higher floor. Like no matter how wonderfully things were going to go, he was never going to crack 50%. And no matter how badly things were going to go, there was a kind of rock solid floor of support for him that wasn't going to evaporate. Democrats feel like there's a different dynamic going on over there. And so it feels like Democrats are more willing to say, I don't approve of the Democratic president's performance. But I wonder, does that translate into anything at the ballot box? Does it translate only to enthusiasm, or would they vote for the other party, or do they all just come flocking back when it's like, okay, I don't approve of Biden's performance, but I also think that they're better than the alternative?
Yeah, right, Ryan. I think it definitely translates into this idea of enthusiasm. I don't think Democrats who are unhappy with Joe Biden right now are necessarily going to be flocking en masse to the Republican Party in the midterms. You could see some crossover, and we have seen that in past elections, but I don't think it is going to be a tidal wave. But there's a couple of groups that I think we should be aware of, swing groups in particular, that could potentially play a deciding role in this election. Suburban women, we constantly hear that term. We've heard that term since the Trump presidency in 2018 when he lost that voting block, or the Republicans did, and we saw Democrats get a majority in the House. Biden, won that voting block as well in states like Georgia. However, we've also seen Republicans in House races start to win that voting block back, not only in 2020, but they're really targeting that group in 2022 as well. That could play a deciding factor. You've also seen some data among Hispanic and Black voters. Hispanic voters in general have shown the biggest, I think, swing from Democrats to Republicans in recent years, and we are seeing that Republicans are very much targeting those voters, looking to recruit those voters to run for office or recruit them to vote for the party or volunteer for the party. And you're also seeing that on a smaller scale among Black voters as well. I don't think the Black voter bloc is going to swing overwhelmingly for Republicans this election. However, talking to Republican operatives in the party here in Washington, there's definitely a movement to start to chip away at that voting bloc to recruit more Black candidates to run for office on the Republican ticket, as well as to attract more Black voters. So these are all voting groups that could potentially decide the election, and they're voting groups where Biden's polling has continued to tick down.
And Philip, is the Republican strategy just to, let that process of Biden losing support continue to play out without adding any sort of complicating factors like, here's our actual agenda, here's what we want? Nope, just talk about Biden the whole time till it's over with.
Talking about Biden until it was over, talking about all the things that Biden is doing to make things worse was sort of the strategy of Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. We saw that when he said that the Republican Party, they would come out with their own agenda after the fact. And then what happens, lo and behold, the National Republican Senatorial Committee chairman, a fellow named Senator Rick Scott, comes out with this 11-point plan for what Republicans can all rally behind. And he sort of gets he gets pillared for it. One of the provisions was that everyone, regardless of income status, should be paying income taxes so that folks could have skin in the game. And there were a number of other policy points as well. But Scott was really attacked for that. And it was seen as him stepping out of line. The reason I mention that is that here you have an example of someone who is going step by step saying what Republicans should be for, rather than just saying that they're going to oppose President Biden at every turn. And that really rankled a lot of folks on the right. It rankled a lot of folks at party headquarters because Republicans feel like they are in such a good position just to say no. And then hopefully the voters will say yes to them at the polls and reward them with majorities in both chambers. That's, their thinking. And I think that the majority of Republicans at this point are more than happy to just let Biden step in it and hope for the best.
Just stay quiet and wash right into the majority. We'll see if they can pull that off. Philip, Julia, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So, new emails from Hunter Biden's laptop reveal the first son may have had a hand in gathering investments for a U.S.-backed biolab in Ukraine. We'll discuss the details when Rising returns.